There's this quote that goes, "Workers of the world unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains." Maybe you've heard of it. Times have changed since 1848, though, clearly. And while the slogan is still popular, I think it's a bit misleading because a lot of workers do have things to lose besides their chains. Things that maybe they didn't have to lose back when that quote was originally issued. And we don't do ourselves any favors or make any inroads in our efforts by ignoring that change. So the quote, which is by Marx and Engels, by the way, is meant to signify that the working class, as a class defined by their relation to the means of production, not owning capital and therefore having to sell their labor to survive, had no fundamental interest in preserving the existing order because it was structurally exploited by it. And since their labor upheld the whole order, it made them the class best positioned to carry out revolution. But many workers possess real material advantages, privileges, attachments, obligations, and so on that complicate that hopeful picture. I'll give you a few examples of what I mean to paint the picture, and to be clear from the outset, I know I'm not the first to recognize these things, and this is not going to be a video that is specifically setting out solutions. I have other videos on my channel sketching out what I think could be done to oppose the system and build alternatives. So, workers may be definitionally exploited in either an anarchist or Marxist sense of the term exploitation, but they're still bought by the system in other ways. A mortgage, retirement savings and pension funds, easy access to cheap consumer goods and credit, the next Marvel movie and other forms of entertainment and leisure, the treats, basically, educational opportunities for themselves or their children. And speaking of children, workers that are parents are likely to be more risk averse. They do have things to lose aside from their chains. It's a lot easier for us childless people to call for radical upheaval. Workers may also enjoy professional credentials and reputation. They may enjoy the benefits of citizenship and the tensions that citizenship brings, where workers in Trinidad, for example, may be resistant to Venezuelan immigration because of the driving down of wages in certain industries that comes with that immigration. That kind of competition over jobs or over housing creates divides between the workers that would be better off uniting. And welfare systems have done a really great job in some parts of the world in de-radicalizing workers' movements and sustaining the stability of the system. Union membership has also served the same function, de-radicalizing the worker movement and integrating it into the functioning of the system. There's also the element of geopolitical privilege compared to workers elsewhere. Workers of the world unite may have been easier when industrial capitalism was concentrated in a few countries, but at this point you have engineers in Germany and dock workers in Singapore and nurses in Canada and garment workers in Bangladesh and cobalt miners in the DRC, and they're all occupying different positions within the same world economy. So there are things to lose besides your chains, even if some of these things like mortgages or credit are chains in themselves. Especially when you're talking about workers in the global north, a lot of them are bought by the treats. They're bought by the relative privileges derived from imperialism. Though obviously some of those privileges are eroding, the workers in wealthier countries are still benefiting from cheap imports, resource extraction abroad, the dominance of their currencies, that kind of thing. The workers of the world are kind of hard-pressed to unite when they're divided by borders, by income differences, by imperialism, between reformists and revolutionaries, and when they experience work in different ways. Some workers see a route for themselves for upward mobility, and so they don't want to rock the boat. Or you might have a worker with a pension that effectively owns fractions of capital and benefits from the positive performance of the stock market. And then you also have workers who occupy more complicated positions. People who may be wage workers as their main source of income, but maybe they have stocks on the side, or they have their own little craft store on Etsy or something. And as I'm on this topic, I feel I should also remind people that economic class reductionism misses the other investments people may have with the status quo. Like, class is not the only thing that matters. That doesn't mean that class doesn't matter, but that people occupy positions in multiple hierarchies simultaneously in terms of class and race and gender, nationality, and so on, which are going to shape their interests beyond their class interests. And the separations of the working class are not mere machinations of the capitalist class. They are durable, material, and status based interests that people actively defend because they benefit from them. Poor working class conservative men or poor working class whites, for example, may still consciously choose gender or racial privilege over economic liberation. So you have to engage on multiple axes. Workers of the world unite. Yes, you have chains to lose, but also the privileges tied to the existing order. Best of luck.